Morning everyone. I had a beautiful shoot this morning. I went out to the Busselton Jetty. It was one of those epic mornings where there was a lot of cloud around, but the horizon was clear. It was kind of that prefrontal stuff that you get where you know there's going to be something good if you can get a break in the cloud on the horizon. And in this case, we did just managed to get to Busselton in time to get the best light. And then when it was really starting to look good, it started to rain as well. But that gave me this beautiful waterfall. So here is the image shot on the Leica SL2, and even with all the help I have in regard to getting a level horizon, I still didn't manage to get a level horizon. I must have been freaking out too much, just like, oh, this is all happening, I've got to be quick, and that's what happens, you kind of get a bit freaked out. But what I'm going to do now is just go in and straighten that horizon. That's the first thing we should do. So you can use this little tool here. I don't like using the auto function. I'd rather draw the line myself, because I think the auto function, it's always guessing, and with these converging lines, I think it may not work as well as just doing it yourself. So there we have a nice straight image. Pretty good exposure. You can see that I've got some white areas there, some light I can still introduce. So I'm going to just look at that. I want to get the image to a point where I'm kind of happy with the exposure. That's, I don't want to go too far. I'm going to bring up some clarity. It always does a nice job. And if it's a bit too light looking, you just grab the dehaze, and it does a great job of crunching it down a little bit more like that. I'm going to add a little bit of shadow there, and probably bring the black point, I'll keep it where it is, and actually I'll come up a little bit. Just don't want to lose that detail down in that foreground. So what I'm trying to do basically just in camera raw is just to get a nice balanced shot that I can then take into Photoshop and work a little bit more on. Obviously it's good to do most of your adjustments on the raw file, and for all this global stuff, that's when I would do a lot of it. I mean, it's good to do that, but if you have a vision in mind for what you want your file to look like, you can pretty much do anything, because it's your file and it's your vision. And by working in certain ways and having certain techniques that you use, that basically creates your style, I guess. And I have a certain look to my images, even though I don't think I do. People say, I can tell one of your images from a mile away, and that's probably because I do the same things on most of my images. I'm going to use the graduated filter here, and I'm just going to, obviously you can do all this in Lightroom as well. Camera Raw and Lightroom is exactly the same sort of thing. Just going to draw a gradient there and just darken that sky down a little bit, add a bit of clarity through there, like so, just to give it just to stop your eye from going out through the top. All this foreground stuff I'll do in Photoshop. So that's looking pretty good. I'll maybe add a bit of dehaze as well. Don't want to get too heavy, but just heavy enough to make it look like you got some nice dark clouds there up in the sky. Next thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to go into 100%. Oopsie, that's not 100%, but that is 100%. And just see what I can do in regards to the quality. Now I've taken 3 images and I focused in 3 different spots. I could focus stack these, but I figured that this is the middle where I focused, probably somewhere around here, probably where that can is actually, which we'll have to get rid of. And that's given me a fairly good depth of field from the front to the back, right throughout. So this was shot on the 16-35mm Leica lens at f8, the ISO at 50. So what I like to do is I like to go in and go to my detail and increase the sharpening up to around 100%. Pretty much bring it up around 90, 100, and I'm just eyeballing it mostly. The other thing, I'll look at the masking. Let's zoom out, hold down the option key and click on the masking tab there, and just pull that back so we're not getting too much sharpening in that sky there. Let's go back to 100%. Look at what that's done. You can see now it's a really nice clean file. It's quite sharp, quite beautiful, and we don't have any noise to worry about. There's a little bit there, a little bit of a bite, but that's okay. It's all looking very nice. So at this point, I will probably export this, and I'm just going to go. I'm just thinking, well, will I do it as a smart object, or will I just do it normal? I have these dilemmas, but let's export it out as a smart object. Okay, there's our image. Hit F on the keyboard. We're in Photoshop now, and I can start to work on this. Things I might look at is making sure that my verticals are going to be a little bit straighter. So let's do that. Actually, we'll do that last. So here's our smart object, and if I right mouse click on there and go up to new smart object via copy, I can now go in, because I want to look at this Jetty and just look at that light there, see if we can add a bit more oomph to it. So let's go in, and I'm going to use this. By doing this, I'm using this the raw file as basically an adjustment layer. So I'm double click back on that, and it takes us back into Camera Raw, and I'm going to look at go back to our basic tab, and I'm just going to increase the exposure there just for that, and I'm just looking at the Jetty, I'm not looking at anything else. And let's maybe look at the dehaze a bit of clarity. Just want to add a bit of light and contrast. You know, a good way to get contrast is to play with your black and white points. You can see you can get quite crunchy results doing that. Okay, let's say we're happy with that. We'll just click OK. That'll change that top layer to what that is there. I'm going to add a layer mask down here. Click on that little icon, and I'm going to invert it. And now I'm going to use a pretty soft brush, and I'm going to paint with white as my foreground color. X on the keyboard will toggle between black and white. And I'm going to use the right square bracket to make my brush a bit bigger. And I'm going to have a low opacity. It's on 30% right now. If I hit 1 on the keyboard, it'll give me a 10% opacity, 2, 20, well, if you hit that twice, 22, 3 was 30, and so on, for up to 0 is 100%. But I'm going to set it to say 20%, and I'm just going to click and drag and just add a little bit of light through that foreground there. It's a little bit muddy in some of those areas, and this is going to help focus our eye in the areas that are important. I'm keeping the foreground a little bit darker, but you can see now if I turn that on and off, that's increased some contrast and some light. It's spilled over a little bit into the sky, so I can go back in with my mask, hit X on the keyboard. So the beauty of obviously layer mask is it allows you to go back and forwards, and fixing up any mistakes. I'm going to go to 100%, and I'm just going to draw across there and just keep that protected. Also, if you hit the backspace key, you can see the mask, that the layer mask represented in red like that, and you can see that it's not so red over the areas that I've brushed. It's a little bit redder down there, and it's fully red at the top there, which is protecting the sky. The other option is you can click the Option key and see what your mask is doing there. And you can see I haven't gone full opacity on that. It's basically grey that I've painted on there, but I've done it evenly. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but now we want to add a little bit more drama to the image, make it look a little bit more interesting again before we start doing any other corrections. So what I might do this time is I'll go back to this bottom layer, right mouse click, and go new smart object via copy. There it is there. And I'll drag that to the top. When I do that, you'll see that what we've just done there has disappeared, but that's okay. We're going to use this to create the light for our vignette, I guess you could say. So let's go in and pull the exposure back like so, and maybe add a bit of dehaze. So now we're starting to get the more dramatic sky, and I'm just going to use this layer to punch a hole out in the areas where I want the light to be, and that'll render the rest as a much darker, and it'll be more dramatic. So again, we're just going to add a layer mask there, and then the white layer mask is revealing the effect. If I want to use my brush tool and paint with black, it will then reveal, it'll hide that black. Okay, so basically it'll punch a hole. So let's go there and let's do one at 100% in the middle, maybe a couple like so, just blow that out a little bit. And I'm then going to drop the opacity back to 20%, and I'm just going to start working my way around the image like so. And I'm trying to keep that drama in the image. Again, I'm feathering that. I'm basically creating a vignette, and I'm making a fairly random pattern because I think it looks more natural than having a perfectly circular vignette, or elliptical, I guess you could say. So this is what I've done. I turn that on and off. You can see before it's it's nice, but it doesn't focus your eye down on the jetty. It just spills out everywhere. Now we're getting some drama. That's looking much better in my mind. You may disagree, but in my mind that looks better, and I think my customers would like that. So there we have some really nice light happening. So let's go back. If we hold down the Option key, click on the eye. That's before, and that's after. So you can see how the eye now is being focused onto the jetty. Just got to be a little bit careful. I'll drop my opacity down to 10% and just work around this end here, because it seemed to be a little bit of a hard edge there, and just slowly bring these areas out. Okay, something like that. It's pretty good. Now I'm going to start adding some other layers on top of that. So the first one I'm going to look at is a curve adjustment layer. I'm just going to work out whether I need to do something with the white balance. Is there a better option? Because I like to experiment, and I don't necessarily have to have the same colors that I saw. This is pretty close to what was there, but it's really hard to know what you did see, and and what your reality is, because you can think you know a color, but 2 hours later it can be completely different to what you thought it was. So what I do is, I'll just cancel that again. I do a curve adjustment layer, hold down the Option key, click on the Auto button, and by clicking on the Auto, holding down the Option key while clicking on the Auto button, it gives you these options. And I'm just going to flick through these. You can see straight up there, it's cooled the image down, cooled it down even more. That's back to normal. If I click on this snap to neutral midtones, that does another thing. So you're getting all these other results. So you're looking at it and going, okay, where is the best? What did I like the most? And I'm pretty happy with the colors I had. Let's just click OK on that one and just see what difference it makes. It definitely pulls the color cast out, but it doesn't enhance the image. So I'll probably keep that. Actually, I'll use this, and then I'll drop the opacity of this layer down to 0 and just pull it up a little bit and just see if there is a point where it actually makes it look a little bit better. So about 41% there is actually quite nice. Now I want to, at this point you might go, okay, well that's pretty much done. The colors are nice, but I'm going to experiment with the color a little bit more to see whether I need to put a bit more into it, make it a bit nicer, and I'm also just going to use my color lookups. Now I've got color look, lots of LUTs here, that more than everyone else, because I use a program called 3D LUT Creator, and when you buy that, in the resources you get a whole heap of different LUTs which can do really cool things, and basically just the set numbers that say, hey, these colors are going to go now become these colors, and you can LUTs are used in the film industry. All your favorite movies have all been graded using particular LUTs, and it's a good way of just getting a bit of a just finding out some different ways to make your images look interesting, because I don't like it when they're just a perfect rendition of the scene. I want to add my marks to it. So you can one of my favorites is the teal and orange. It's already quite teal and orange, but in this case it doesn't work. I don't like that one. The other one I use quite a lot is the saturate. It's not a bad one, but it gets very colourful. So I don't mind that, but I want to just bring that back. So I'm going to drop the opacity back, take it back to 0, and just slowly bring that up to where I'm happy. So somewhere about 40%, I reckon, is just about right. So I'll turn that on and off. That just brought some more colour in. And now I'm just looking at the colour of the yellows there. They possibly could be a little bit more orange. So I'm going to go to selective colour, and selective colour is great in that if I want to affect the yellows and I want to make the yellows a different better colour, I can do things like pull some of the cyan out, and all of a sudden that yellow goes more orange with less cyan in it. It's quite a good way of working. Obviously you can put more yellow in there if you want, but I won't do that one. So you can see there the yellows now look more orange, and I could look at the reds as well, see what they're like. Oh, I'm drinking a coffee, but it's getting very cold now because I'm doing a lot of talking. When you get to the end of a coffee and it's cold, it's not pleasant. Anyway, let's see what happens if I pull. Now, if I pull the cyans out of their reds, look at that. That gets really red. If I go the other way, it kind of takes it back to normal. So, but I don't want to go too crazy. Obviously, magenta does more stuff as well. I don't really want to add more magenta in it. Not a real fan of magenta and green for that matter. Just fooling around with the yellows a little bit now as well. The yellows in the red, but I think they need to stay where they are. So let's turn that on and off and see what difference that made. So that's before, and that's after. Now, do we like it or not? That's the question. I think it's probably better because it was like that. It was quite nice and warm, but I think that's starting to look pretty nice. So let's go back to our starting point, before and after. Before, after. Yeah, reasonably happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I don't recommend you do this, but I do it all the time. Command Shift E or Control Shift E, and that will flatten your image. Also, just need to flatten it again because it's a smart object. So yeah, I'm gonna I'll save it out later. But that looks pretty good, except for the fact some of the verticals aren't really vertical, and I may have to go in there and clean up some stuff as well. But I'm gonna just look at the verticals now. So I'm gonna go Command A to select all. I mean, you can go and add a new layer on top. If you use Command J, you can create a copy of the background layer, and then you can create a copy of the background layer, or you just do it the way I do, selecting all and just transforming it that way. So Command T, and right mouse click, go to skew, and also I'm going to bring up my rulers, Command R or Control R, and I'm just going to put a ruler there and another one over here, and another one just over here as well. Okay, so now I can pull these sides out. As you do that, you'll see that it actually flattens the image out as well. It's going to be hard to get it perfect. It was a fairly wide angle lens, but that main one is that light post there. It's not looking too bad. We're going to have some distortion. That's just the way it is, but I'm going to hit return. Okay, and then I'm going to go Command T again, and I hold down the Shift key, and I'm just going to pull that up a smidgen. Maybe pull that down a little bit as well, just to bring back the fact that we flattened it out. If you go Command dot dot, what is that, a semicolon? That removes those guides there. So now that's starting to look a little bit better. If we go back in our history, let's have a look at our history. Go back to flatten image. You can see how it looks much straighter, much nicer. Quite incredible how much difference that makes. Also, it cleaned up that corner area here that of the post, didn't look so good. So I reckon that's probably just about right. Let's have a look at that horizon again. It's pretty close. Close enough for jazz, as they say. So now that image is looking a little bit awesome. I'll be happy with that and sell that in my gallery. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this tutorial.